morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to another episode of the All I Do Is Win podcast. Let's put our hands together for this phenomenal, amazing occasion. Listen, we actually have today a couple firsts. The first is this is the first time the three of us have been on the podcast at the same time.
Okay.
So that's pretty dope.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So we'll start off where I'll say who I am if this is your first time joining us, and then each of you can tell us who you are, and then I'm going to hop back in. So I'm Terrence Jones. I'm the Director of Academic Enrichment here at Pierce College, and I'm really looking forward to diving into this conversation today. This podcast is built on student success principles, but with personal life applications so that our students, so that our community can get real life value out of this every single time. So the subjects are not always going to be the same, but it's always going to be insane. Meaning you're going to be able to get something out of it from a provocative and introspective way. So I look forward to our talk today because we got some really dope things to really dive into. But let me pass it over to my left.
Stewart Pradia. I'm the head men's basketball coach at Rutgers Camden. Originally from Houston, Texas, and just excited to be here, bro.
Word.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Thank you, Stu. Anthony Jones, instructor at Rutgers University, New Brunswick. Also a PhD student, but more importantly, a father of three, two boys and one girl, and excited to be here and chop it up.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Yeah. And that's a random but interesting alignment that both of y'all have a Rutgers connection, because that was not intentional at all.
When I was signing in, I was like, right? I don't know. So yeah. No,
But we connected off camera.
True,
And that's
true.
the networking part. So maybe we'll have some time to talk about that
Yeah,
as
yeah,
well.
yeah.
How
Yeah.
it's a small world out
Yeah,
here. You never
it
know.
is, man.
It is a small world.
It is.
It's so small that both of you have already been on the podcast, just not together.
True. We had lunch before. We'd already it was connected. So
That's wild. That's
always
wild.
good to
That's
see
wild.
you.
That's wild. So that was one of the firsts, right? Another first is we actually have a home, y'all. Check this out. We in the
it's
studio.
nice. It's really nice.
The All I Do
Really
Is
nice.
Win studio. It's
Yeah.
a little clean.
Yeah.
You know, smells new.
No, that's why
comfortable.
you got the Cam Newton fit on. That's like it's new stuff.
Hey,
you know what
hey.
I mean? Like
Hey, listen. This is one of the things that I believe is just going to be the thing. And this message is actually going to go to the videographer because he's been here through it all. I think Stewart is the only one who comments on my fit every single
got
time
to.
he's on.
I have to.
Every single time without fail. Am I right?
He's right.
It's a compliment. That's a love language for
Hey,
me.
I
bro.
received
You know
the
what I mean?
love. I
Yeah.
received the compliment,
Yeah.
and I don't necessarily know if I subscribe to Cam's fits as the go-to, but I will say that sometimes he could put it on.
Okay.
Sometimes he puts it on.
Yeah,
Sometimes
yeah.
it looks a little insane in the other way.
True. I have not seen that from you though. So it for me it's always complimentary. It's just
Excellent,
That's how my brain works. I associate things with other
Okay,
things. And so,
okay.
yeah.
All right, cool.
It's the what do you call that? What do you
What do I call what?
is it a tie? Is it
a
a scarf? It's a scarf. It's a scarf. Okay. I'm trying to learn.
Okay,
I'm
all
trying
right.
because I don't
Well,
put it
listen,
on like
well,
that.
listen, let's make a deal.
All right.
The next episode, because you're coming back,
Okay. All right.
you gotta be outside of RU swag. Can we make that happen? Where you're not wearing RU swag.
Maybe.
Okay.
We'll try.
All right, we'll see what happens.
We'll try.
We'll see
We'll
what
try.
happens. 'Cause
We'll
we
try.
gotta be able to reverse it.
Well,
Is that fair? Is that fair?
I think it's fair. But I think where Stu is going is that he wants you to be able to bring the new stylists that we're gonna hire.
Maybe that's what
it's
it
gonna
is.
bring some clothes for Stu to fit
Yeah.
in. And
Okay,
it'll be
okay.
Because
great.
we got different body types, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Okay.
and this for free. So this is really like an economical fit. You know what I'm saying? Like this
Econ,
is
econ.
yeah.
I see that.
I even waited for these I got these on my man work at Nike. So,
Hey,
shout
nice,
out
nice,
Elijah, yeah.
Nice,
Yeah,
nice,
yeah.
nice.
So it's just that's all this is.
super
that's
dope.
all this is.
Super dope.
Yeah.
I support that all the way. I'm looking forward to this next fit too.
Right.
In the next spot.
I got a surprise for you. It's gonna look a lot like this. No, this
Pull out the mink. Pull out the mink. So listen, we're gonna hop right in. And today, like I said, we always do. We always talk about things that are aligned with student success adjacent, or student success submerged. And today, I really want us to look at just success. Again, we always talk about success in some area, but in the age of the side hustle. I think it's really interesting nowadays how there's not as much of a pursuit of the degrees. Like I love that Anthony said, I'm a PhD student, but you're also a professor, right? So you're in a space where you're still pursuing more knowledge, but you're in a space where you're also giving knowledge to students who are looking up to you from an academic, professional, life cycle perspective. That's super dope. But what I think we're finding is that less students are making that type of a pursuit their own, where they're saying, hey, what's the fastest way for me to get to that dollar bill? And there's always been an element of that, no matter how far back we go. But I think it's just more pervasive now. And I think a lot of schools are actually feeling the impact of that, right?
Absolutely.
Because there's never been as many mergers in academia as we have now. Pierce College is actually going through a merger right now. With Lackawanna College. Let's put our hands together for that merger, which is actually going over very well. But the need for mergers actually is emerging from the fact that there's less students who are pursuing education and pursuing education through the same lens, but their side hustle's different. And there's a student that I think of. I'm not going to say his name, but back in the day when I was a senior counselor at Rutgers Camden, there was a student of mine who was an interesting student. And he was interesting because he was not the prototypical student who wanted to try to do well. He was already just doing well, like in terms of academics. So he was a high B student, didn't really give a lot of effort and energy to his grades. He was gifted in this way. He knew how to get his work done, but socially he really wasn't seeing the value of like the community piece. And a lot of the times I think we talk about education through the lens of success through degree attainment,
Yes.
Through academic success. But there's other elements of the higher education space that's really critical. There's a quote from Dr. Henry Huxley, William Henry Huxley. And it says that perhaps the greatest value of education is that it makes you do what has to be done, whether you like it or not. This is the first lesson that ought to be learned. And I think that in the space of education, we end up kind of coming to heads with that. Like, beyond getting a good grade, am I doing what needs to be done in life? Am I studying when I could party? Am I actually buckling down and reading when I prefer to be doing something else? And I think that's really a conversation that we all can have. But what I love about this student is he found that he wasn't really adapting to the culture of the campus. He wasn't intersecting with teachers, with his peers. He really was, and we say this now, that 101. Like he moved around like a silo. And it wasn't until he came to my office, because I was like, hey, listen, let's rap, let's talk, let's find a way to connect. And while we were connecting, I was going through a sale of a property, and he happened to be in the room. So I'm speaking to my realtor and telling him something. I can't remember what the details were around it, but when I hung up the phone, his posture was different. He was sitting back like he really didn't want to be there at first. But when I got off the phone, he's sitting like this. And I'm like, I said, you all right? He was like, I didn't know that you were in real estate. And I said, yeah, so I do real estate on the side. And he was like, oh, let's talk about that. I have a cousin who does real estate, and I'm interested in this and that. And this is the first time he actually had a question. Before that, I had all the questions and he had the one-word answers. Now he's all the way engaged. So from this point moving forward, he would come to my office every single day, and we go for a walk and we talk real estate. We didn't need to talk academics because he was already doing well academically.
Yeah.
We didn't need to talk even about the social elements because he wasn't messing up as much, because we had a healthy relationship. But let me tell you, this guy in his junior year decided to leave school to go do real estate full time, and now he's a millionaire. He's literally a million. Now let me say this. You may not always know where someone's dollar for dollar impact and imprint is in their life.
Absolutely.
But I'll say this. He's recorded having think tanks on yachts in Miami. And he was one of my students. And my students, they know, like, they would come in and they'll be saying, hey, I'm hungry because I spent all my money from in the food court or whatever by October, and now it's December, so I'm out. Mr. Jones, could you hook me up with something? Yeah. Like that was the culture. Okay. But he's literally yachts in Miami, videos and Lamborghinis and stuff like that. So at least he has access to a lifestyle that was not his portion back then.
Better be careful with that social media, though.
You got to be careful.
The scammers will show you a lifestyle that may not be theirs. But it sounds like he was a young man that I think sometimes because there are so many other options and ways to, put your time in, like we were talking about, social media, like there's a real market for building a business, building your own business just through your phone, or there's accounts dedicated. The internet is a wild place right now. And I think these kids that grow up, like that is what they grow up in. They see the world differently than we do. Like we came from parents who it was very kind of structured and linear, and they would work the same job for 30, 40, 50 years. And I remember this was probably when I was first kind of coming out of college, and I had a couple of jobs, like 3, and I work in coaching, so it's like that's normal. But the way my mom and my grandmother were looking at me, like, why you keep changing jobs? And because that group of that generation didn't have more than one job, maybe 2 jobs. Whereas now it's normal. Like people are jumping jobs, every few months. And I'm not saying that's healthy, but I think, I forget who it was I saw, but they were saying like you shouldn't be at a job longer than like 2 to 3 years without like a significant raise or promotion. And that's what's getting taught to a lot of these kids from what I'm seeing. So they're just not buying into the traditional, linear academic route that I think a lot of us were raised under.
No, that's good, Stu. And I wanted to touch on a little bit about what T mentioned, because I think as a coach, right, and then also as an educator, is that I think you were alluding to that teacher-student relationship, right? And I think as a coach, you have to tap into the gifts that the students have that they might not see. And then I think what you did, T, was even indirectly, right, the fact that he came into your office, heard you talking about something else, you tapped into something that he had an interest in or she had an interest in. And I think that's the key to being a successful coach, being a successful parent, being a successful brother, sister, is that you really got to tap in to what those, your students, your kids, those gifts. I see it with my 9-year-old, right? Like if you ask him, how was school today? He gives that one, fine, good, right. So you know how it is. You work with, right? But you got to really tap in and say,
you gotta ask different questions.
You got to ask different questions, right? Because if not, you'll get that same answer until he's 18 and he walks across, or 17, he walks across. How was your schooling? Good, right?
It was cool.
It was cool, right? So I think where I'm headed to is more or less like to ask the different questions, but also too is that if we're also focusing on the educators that are teaching the next generation, I think it's the tools, right? Like AI, which we're alluding to, I'm sure, in this conversation, is that there's still that human connection, right? You still have to ask a question. AI is not going to be able to tap into that kid's psyche all the time, right? You need to have that personal connection to do that.
No, I like where we're starting off, because I think we're talking from the perspective of educator to student, and I want us to start off, and I think we'll be able to speak to this from different lenses today, but I want us to start almost from the challenge. And it's a little provocative, but I want us to look at this like, is education still the golden ticket? Because it used to be. For sure, where it's like no matter what you do, make sure you get that education. But now students are pushing back on that narrative, and they're showing that by not being students anymore. And I kind of want us to talk about that for a little bit.
I think there's a balance, because 2 things can be true at once. I think there's a lot of, I forget what the percentage is, and this was years ago. Like this, my brain works like I'll find out a fact and it'll just kind of stick there. But they were just talking about how there are MBAs, like Harvard MBAs, unemployed, and like a lot of them. And so like the market has shifted, and there are certain jobs where if you have if you don't have that degree, you are going to make less money than if you do have that degree. And I think it's, like you said, talking about finding those interests. Like, what are you passionate about? What are your interests?
Absolutely.
And then aligning, because one of the things we're talking about too is it's not just about engaging the students, but like the schools themselves have to adapt.
Correct, yes.
Because they're still, that's, I mean,
like that.
If we're talking about, you know, because that's what we're really talking about, right? Like evolution. And if you want something to be marketable, like you want this education to be marketable, like you got to make it that.
Yeah.
And if you still got the same programs that you had 20 years ago, and all the kids want sports marketing, or they want, you know, not the traditional computer
Absolutely,
science, but
Stu.
something like, yo, you need to get that. I was talking to somebody today. Oh, one of my friends, his daughter, he coaches basketball, but his daughter plays volleyball, and she wants to do social media. Like, she's big into social media as a career, and she's looking at school. She's a scholarship level volleyball player.
Yeah.
But she's considering, like, I may play, I may not.
Right.
But what I really want, I want to go to school at a school that has my major, and so it can still work. It's just the schools got to start, you know, developing their programs a little bit more. So it attracts. It's sales at the end of the day. You
No,
know what I'm saying?
I like that, Stu, because right, you mentioned like with your parents,
Let
right?
me pause just before you go
ahead.
into that.
Yeah.
Because you threw out something, you know, we're education-centered podcast. And one of the things that I want to establish in our culture here is fact-checking. Somebody say fact-checking.
Fact checking.
All right, so this is a fact-check moment. Stu just threw out some stats, and I want to confirm those stats to be absolutely correct. So, according to Harvard's own data reported in 2025, 23% of its spring 2024 MBA graduates were still unemployed 3 months after graduation. This rate marks a significant increase from 10% in 2022 and 20% in 2023. So let's put our hands together for that correct fact check.
Listen, bro.
Hey, listen, when we throw out facts, we got to check them.
Absolutely.
And this time,
Got to.
Stu is right.
We gotta tell the truth.
I knew you
That's crazy. He set me up. No, the wild part. I was like, yeah, I got all right. He said, all right. That's what we doing. That's the get back.
There's always a risk. There's
the
always
get
a
back.
risk.
That's
There's always
the
a
get
risk.
back.
But this time it paid off for you.
Wow.
All right, Ed, you got the floor, man.
I mean, I think what Stu was saying is spot on, right? Which is we a lot of times put the onus on the students, right? Like, it's the students. They're not doing this. They're not doing this. They're not doing that. But I do think the institutions play a big role. And I think what we see a lot of times in academia is that 5 to 7 year gap of by the time the students are already using it, higher ed for the most part is already 3 to 5 years behind, right? So when we I never forget, a student said ChatGPT about 3-4 years ago, had no clue what it was. Students were already using it. So once it got up to the faculty, and they're trying to, you know, check things and everything, they don't.
Late.
They want
on to the next.
something else, right? But in academia, then it becomes, oh, we got to get a policy. So to Stu's point, I think what the universities really have to do is to tap into the students. What majors are they interested in? You said your friend's daughter, social media and communications, right? So back in our day, it was just you go to school for communications, you did marketing. Now everybody has to have a social media manager, right? The church, football team, school. Everybody has one. That's a relatively new career that you can go to school for. So I just say that to reiterate the point that Stu was making is that the institutions really have to hone in and really listen to the students about what is coming next, so they can actually meet those needs.
But I think what you're speaking to is a powerful point of tension for the education system as a whole. Because
That was gonna be my question.
If we're honest, the institution of education is intrinsically, from the inside out, elitist.
Absolutely.
My question is, see, man, that's why we the all-stars.
We connected.
That's
We
why
connected.
the all-stars.
Right.
When you were talking about what you were talking about, that was going to be my question to you, is like, how willing is, to me, the people that I meet in academia who are, you know, on the other side of campus, I'll say, it feels a little stuffy. It feels a little like tight, where they're not trying to, they're in these little, you know, echo chambers where they're discussing the ideas that they kind of want to discuss, but they're not. Every time I feel like I talk to somebody that's on the college campus, my question is always, what did the kids say? Like, what did the kids say they wanted? Because we talk about the student experience or the student athlete experience, but it's like, you're not actually asking the customer what they want, because we really are in a customer service.
Absolutely.
If we're at colleges, like, we're serving these kids in these ways. And like, what are your thoughts on? Because you saying the same thing.
Yeah.
Where it's not built to innovate the way it should, and that seems like what needs to change.
Yeah, so I would say that the framework is there for innovation to happen, and there are some schools who are doing a great job of it. But what I think is, to your point, that there are some populations within that environment that have historically been underrepresented, under-resourced, and don't necessarily recognize the power of their voice, because in some institutions where students have an awareness of the power of their voice, they understand the value that they bring, they synthesize themselves together through powerful platforms, and change happens in the direction that they're looking for. I think sometimes in some institutions we don't see that as much. And in those spaces it ends up being administrator-led versus student-led. And at the center of student success is the administrator, but the best administrators listen to the students.
Yeah.
So it's like, I think there's almost like a multifaceted responsibility here. It's like, are the students aware of the power that they hold? Are they leveraging that power as a collective versus as a single person? I remember at one institution I was at, there was an issue in the food court where like the students did not like the food, and they would complain amongst each other. They would complain to teachers, but they would never collect themselves. And I said, all it would take is maybe like a week. And I didn't tell them to do this, but I was talking with one of the students. I said, if y'all were to gather yourselves and like do a sit-in and nobody eat for a week, like the amount of money that the school would lose and the fact of you not engaging it may not make a huge dent in their overall, because they got your money already because tuition's paid, but the imagery of it may make a big enough impact where they begin to look at, well, who do we have as the head chef? Where are we getting our food from? What choices would our students prefer over what we've been offering? If it's just one or two people having these conversations in their own student echo chambers, it's never going to make a change from the top. So I think there is a mutual responsibility, but I think sometimes the path that students have had before they get into education sets their awareness of how much power they actually have.
No, that's good. I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head, T, which is historically, right? I mean, even you have the black student movements, right, in the 60s, right? I mean, it's student-led, right, collectively, to your point, T, right? So I think any movement or any innovation has to be collective, can't be in an echo chamber. But I know certain universities, right, they serve different purposes too, right? So meaning that, if you take the Ivies, for instance, right, those historically have been innovation hubs, right? The Stanfords and, the Yales and Harvards and stuff like that. But it's going to look a lot different at the local community college, right? I mean, because the student population is going to look different. Demographics, right? So I think even then, though, the community colleges that I've been associated with, having started at one, is that it is that social mobility hub, though, for a lot of people, right? You're going back to school maybe because you had a kid, or multiple kids, or you need a new job, right? So, but I do think those community colleges, at least the ones that I know in Jersey, do offer a lot of programs that you don't have to do 4 years, right? You can get that 2-year, right?
Associates.
Right. 2 years just to be able to get into a new, economic maybe stratosphere to keep going and stuff, right? So I think where, Terrence, what you're talking about is that I think where a lot of 4-year colleges struggle is because a lot of students are really asking themselves the question, do I really need to sit here for 4 years to be able to get this, right, what we call, right, the bag? Right? To your point with the student, right? Like, do I have to sit here for 4 years to take this literature class that I know I'm not going to do anything with, when I could tap into real estate, right? So I do think it comes back down to the 4 years, is that not every student that enters, Rutgers or, Stockton or Rowan or Pierce wants to sit in class for 4 years. I think it's I'll be honest with you, I think even thinking back on my experience, it's a long time. It goes quick, but it's just like a lot of the classes. I don't remember a lot of the classes. It was just taking them just to take them.
So what would you say to, because for me, I think it's about, yes, the education is important, but I mean, my first job was from a teammate's dad who owned a business. You know what I'm saying? Like it's, because that's a big part of the Ivies or a Stanford
Correct.
or like
connection,
it's who you get connected to in those
Absolutely.
spaces.
Right.
A lot of those people, and there's a lot of different levels of it, right? Like at the top of the top, like I don't know if that's still happening, but certainly traditionally they were sending kids to these schools to find a wife or find a husband
right.
from a family like ours, so that we can continue to move these things
Excellent
forward.
point, Stu.
And
Yeah.
so I've been fortunate enough to kind of be on both ends of it, where like I went to Brandeis, and
Great school.
it was kind of and it's funny because I saw, like, looking back, I don't even think I realized what was happening while it was happening, but we actually did a sit-in. The paper had printed the N-word, honestly, had like alluded to it. And one of my closest friends, Justin Moore, he actually runs Uncle Bobby's, the bookstore in Philly. But he and a couple of older students led it. And, we sat in and got the editor and whoever, like, got them up out of there. There's also been the men's basketball program, the women's basketball program. The students have used like media outlets, because that's the other thing. There's so many more media outlets where they push back against the coaches. And so this was something that got out.
Yeah.
I contrast that to where I'm at now at Rutgers Camden, where the students, a lot of them are ESL, first generation.
Yeah.
Like we were talking about, the demographics are different. They don't even have those skills or like the parents sometimes to instill those things. And so they don't even know that it's possible, because also, for some of them, like, this is a much better place than my home life. So I'm just happy to be on campus. I'm happy to have food every time I go to the, so it's.
Right, what am I fighting for?
It's a thing where college, I think one of the cool things, and again, like we were talking about earlier, two things can be true at once.
Yep.
There's so many different options for schools that can offer different things, because everybody's different. There's so many different people. But at the same time, like, it's like y'all were talking about, like, the school's got to keep innovating, or else the business model is going to start to fold. It's like, you've been selling it this way, this thing, for 50, 60 years, but
It's not
times are
working
changing,
anymore.
bro. The customers want something different. And I don't know, as we're having this conversation, that's what it kind of keeps coming to with me. Like, if you don't think about the music industry, they fought it, but then it's like, bro, technology is inevitable. You know what I'm saying? Like, you were talking about ChatGPT, like, you can fight it. I ain't doing that. Okay.
It's here.
But it's coming.
Right.
And everybody else is using
here,
it. You
right.
can fall behind if you want to. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Like, not embracing social media to market, your business, or your, like, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing? That don't make sense.
Right.
So,
right. No, I appreciate that. And I think even as we're speaking, I want to pause for the cause real quick. And I want to throw it back to you to kind of share with us your exposure to the Ivy League space, so that, we kind of just get the range of background that we have on the sofa. Like, tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I mean, I think I've been, and I also want to hear from, because I had also a question for Stu, so I don't want to forget that too. But I think for me, it's interesting because my direct connection to really the Ivies is that my mom grew up in Harlem. So back in the late 80s, 90s, you take the train uptown, right? And, it was a clear divide, right? So if anyone has been around 116th Street, Columbia there, to enter Columbia, black gates, right? So those gates for a lot of the Harlem residents symbolizes, exclusion, right? It's not very much inclusive, right? So unless you actually maybe work for the university or have been to the university, you don't necessarily walk through there, right? You walk around or, X, Y, and Z. So I think what has been interesting in my life is that I've been able to work in places like Camden, Trenton, Newark, but I've also been able to work on some campuses. I've worked at Columbia University. I have done some admissions work at Princeton. This summer, I taught at Yale, right? So my viewpoint is these universities definitely serve a great purpose to what Terrence is saying as far as innovation, right? And I think to even Stu's point, which is relationships, right? And sometimes the kids that go there don't even, don't even need to go to college, right? If you're coming from money, right? But they go there, right, to pursue whether, it be art. So it's not so much they're pursuing it from a space of, I need to get the bag. They already have the bag. They're just pursuing it for greater knowledge, connections, X, Y, and Z.
And the party.
And the party, right. Have fun at 18, 19, right. Right, Stu, right. So I think where I see it is the schools do a really, some of those schools do a really good job of introducing tech, right, AI. But I think the rub and the tension that I see, even when I was at Yale this summer, is that you then have a community that is displaced. So if you're in New Haven, huge homeless problem, drug problem, violence problem, right? So I think the universities and some of the scholarship I'm looking at now is how do the universities come to grips and really what are they doing for the communities, right? So I think that's where I want to see more innovation. I don't want to see it just in a place where it's behind or in the classroom, but I want to kind of see, let's push it into the community, because I think to your point earlier, Terrence, and actually you said it too, Stu, is that you're missing out on so many different populations of just people, right? Just because they don't have the resources, right? So I hope I answered that in a way where my push is for all schools. I think Rutgers Camden is doing a great job in certain aspects of how do we get the next generation of students on campus, but also showing them what is actually possible once they get to school, and then take those skills outwards. Yeah.
What do y'all think?
Before we go, I got to big up Pierce College, the work that they're doing there, and also Lackawanna College, because they're really innovating. And they're doing a lot of things that are still yet to be seen. And I just want to, being that I'm there, I get to see it behind the lines. I think that, they just needed to shout out in that moment. So holla back at your boy. Right.
I had a question, but I also wanted to know what your question was earlier. I've always...
How'd you get there to Brandeis?
So basketball, in short, but my high school coach, I didn't want to stay in Texas. I was just silly 18-year-old kid. I thought, hey, let me see something different, right? Not knowing that, I had it really good in Texas. Texas is dope. That's why everybody's moved to Houston. Please stop moving to Houston. It's too crowded. It's too much traffic. Too many transplants.
Great migration.
We
Atlanta
full.
And Houston.
We full, and it's already too hot. It's too hot. Y'all don't want to go to Houston. But anyway, my high school coach was really instrumental in finding schools. It was some schools out west, but my brain wasn't really computing it. And it came down to Brandeis, Rochester, and Tufts. And Rochester was scratched because it was kind of relatively, not rural, but it was just way too snowy. And my mom was like, you're going to get stuck up there. I don't want that to happen. So I was like, all right, cool. Boston, big city, Brandeis or Tufts. My coach was like, you want to be on the bus eating pizza, or you be on a plane going to Atlanta? And I was just like, well, that's an easy one. I want to do that. So,
But Stu, I think you're selling yourself a little short, because when you're talking about it goes back to that student-teacher or teacher-student relationship. He saw something in you, not just basketball.
Yeah,
right?
That's a much longer story. That's the life story.
Right, but when you say Tufts and Brandeis and academia, right? You're not a 1.0 student.
Right.
That's what I'm saying.
From a family of educators, mom, grandfather, grandmother, aunt,
all the people even an option.
There was never.
That's what I'm alluding to.
Okay.
I wanted to know more about that, because not everyone has the opportunity to go to a Tufts or a Brandeis. So the fact that you were able to do that, Coach saw something in you, but also too, it sounds like the legacy that your parents and grandparents, you had that. The intellect.
For sure. No, that's all it was. You were always going to, you were going to school, you were going to college. So that was it. My question to y'all though, because I think about what we were talking about earlier with, when I speak to kids all the time, who, I want to major in this, I want to major in that. With me, unfortunately, I find a lot of kids that are more focused on basketball than they are about their education.
Right.
There was a kid, I'll never forget, I'm not going to say the kid's name, but he was convinced that if he worked hard enough, he could play professionally overseas. and like he just wasn't that good. He didn't really even start for us, and we weren't that good. And I was like, I told him, I'm like, bro, you are so much closer to getting your degree than you are to being a professional basketball player. Like, enjoy this. If you don't have to play, but like you're like a year and a half away from your degree. That's why you're here. But even within the recruiting process, like I'm always talking to kids, like that's probably my second question is, what do you want to study? Why do you want to do that?
Right. Yeah.
What do you want to do after you're done with school? Most of the conversations, I'm not talking about basketball because that's the easy part. If you'll listen and work hard, like you can be successful on the basketball floor. But the thing that I've realized is if you're not trying to be a doctor or an engineer, like, does it really matter what your major is in a lot of careers? Like, to be a lawyer, you can major in anything.
But I was going to say, Stu, which is interesting with the story, because I see that a lot too, is there's, and I would love to hear what T thinks about this, because we have young kids, but a lot of kids just don't know what they want to do.
Oh, for sure.
Right? So even if, you know what I mean? Like, so it's not even the major, it's just like, I just want to hoop, or just like, so I think raising two sons, I'm hyper, I guess, sensitive also too of how do I instill in them, like, okay, sports is important, right? But like, how do I tap in or inspire or whatever it is to get them to just see more things? Will it be music or this or that? So I guess I'll turn that over to maybe to you, Stu and T. Like, how do you get young, especially black and brown men, to look beyond just the ball? Because that's
you gotta expose them to stuff. It's,
right.
So, all right, small version of my own personal story. My aunt was instrumental in raising me, and what she did was my mom was working. She was a single mom. She was working. She was trying to get her stuff together. But my aunt was the one who bought me drums for a Christmas. She got me guitar lessons. Yeah. She put me in the basketball. She put me in the t-ball. She was showing, hey, go take this test at this school over here. Like, she would, and so it's really as much as you can. Like, just expose these kids to as many, because you don't know what's gonna stick. And it's even sitting here talking about it, I think about like at Rutgers, and I don't want to throw no, some schools I'll say, it's probably not just Rutgers. Like, you have to choose a major when you're showing up. But it's like, who really knows what they want to do at 18? You know what I mean? Whereas I remember thinking back at Brandeis, we didn't choose majors till like second semester, sophomore year. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, go in, get some things under your belt. And
innovate.
Yeah, it's educate, because it's also like, but maybe you change the way these, because that's what we're really talking about, like systemic changes in how things are done. If you want a different result, you can't.
But see, but the privilege though, you like at certain schools, because what I'm hearing too, you have the privilege to be able to take that time. And I think a lot of times in certain communities, you don't have the necessary time to do. You're on the clock.
Yeah.
Like, if I'm the first.
You're
right. I got 6 years.
You're right.
8 years.
I gotta get up out of here.
I gotta get up out of here.
You're right.
You know what I mean? And I gotta find something, because I don't want to go back.
You're right.
Let me hop in there, because I think there's this intersection between exposure, between perspective of what success is, and what academia, the institutions, is showing as what we can afford you. Because to your point, you were exposed to certain things which gave you value as a springboard, but those were natural, organic exposures. You know, you had someone who was a mentor, who saw something in you and gave you something that could almost be an option for you based on what they already saw. I almost feel like our students have a hyper exposure through social media, where they're being exposed to so much that they think everything is possible, which, even to your point about the student who thought they could be an overseas basketball player, I would be curious how many overseas basketball players he actually knew. Because in most spaces where you're actually connected to a person who's in the realm, they'll set the bar in a reasonable space for you. Like, hey, listen, young blood.
This ain't for you.
You want to kind of look in this direction. You know, you kind of have that one-to-one interaction. Nowadays, you kind of see the experiences of the 1%. shared among the 99%, where all 99 are looking to live like the one, when there's a lot of success that happens before you even get to that 1% experience of exposure. Another thought is, even when you're navigating these spaces of challenge, of pursuit, you're still evolving as a student. Like, who you are as a person is different. So like, who I was at 17 is completely different from who I was at 27, which is completely different from who I was at 37. So I love the point you made, that how at 18 are you now qualified to really say what you should be for the rest of your life? And I even want to go back a little bit, even when it comes to like the different fields, there are specific pathways that can give you a streamlined approach into different fields, like being a lawyer or other areas. But I think a lot of times the issue is that a lot of our students are attempting to navigate academia as an isolated unit, and they're just making decisions. Like, I've imagined, based on what I see on the website and based on what I've seen online, that I can do it if I do this. And they don't even want advice anymore. They don't come and say, hey, coach, what do you think about this path that I'm on? They'll tell you what their path is. They're new to the space that you live in. Like, this is your career. You've been doing this for multiple seasons, and you were in it yourself. A reasonable person would say, hey, this is something I'm thinking. I have a guru in front of me. Let me bring my idea to the guru and see if this actually makes sense from someone who I either respect, know, have proximity to, who's farther along than me.
That's good.
And I think too often we don't see that.
I agree wholeheartedly.
Yeah.
And coming back to it's similar. You talked about privilege earlier. It made me think of my first girlfriend went to Harvard undergrad, and I don't know what she's doing now.
You set the bar high first.
Listen, man.
Right. Where's she at now?
Not with me.
For all
but now,
guys out there, where's she at now?
Where they go? What they say on TikTok? Find this one. Find her. Where's her at?
What's her name?
I'm pretty sure I'm blocked, but that's a whole nother that's a whole nother conversation.
Yeah.
So, but my point was, when she was there, she really to what we're talking about.
Yeah.
She wasn't really sure what she wanted to do. She thought she might want to be a doctor, but once she got into it, she was kind of like, I'm not really sure.
Yeah.
And that place, I remember her talking to me about that place not being great for people who didn't know what they wanted to do. But if you knew what you wanted to do,
right.
like they were like, okay, exactly what you just said. Here are these people that you can talk to. Here's this professor that's already done it. Here's this alum that's already done it. Oh, you play sports too? Cool, we gotta. And so it speaks to those schools. And I think you could probably speak to it more than me, but if you look at a Princeton or one of the reasons they're so successful, besides them just being old, but I think they keep adapting and they keep offering things based on what their students are
I like that.
Oh, that's where it's going, or that's where. But
I like that.
Now that we talking, I was like, nah. She said that. She was like, yeah, it ain't really where you want to be if you don't know what you want to do. But if you do,
this is
the paths are already set. And you can,
Well, we're going to begin to land a plane right there. I think we had a lot of good conversation, but what I think we can put a good bow on this if we close this out talking to the student who is navigating the ability to get a bag now or pursue an education now. And I think we talked a little bit about all of that, like the opportunity that's there, but then also the full opportunity of education that's sometimes missed in the pursuit of the degree. Degree attainment is a success, but it's one of many successes. And with all of us being in higher ed space, I'll probably start with you, Anthony. If you could just talk to the students that are out there that are kind of navigating that pursuit of the bag versus should I finish this degree and get this thing done, what would you tell them?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a tough question, but I think really it comes down to that personal choice. But I do think it is something that Terrence and Stu, you mentioned, is that before you make that choice, hopefully you can speak to someone in that particular field, a mentor or just someone that you can call to say, hey, not to dissuade you, but like, this is the reality of the situation, right? I mean, if you want to fly to Hollywood and be an actor or an actress, I love the dream, but you also hopefully are going to be connected with someone that has been in the field to let you know, like, this is a tough field to be in. You know, you got to find a place to live. You still got to eat, right? So, and I think it goes back to dealing with students in the past. It's like, I'm not killing your dream, you know. I want to encourage you to reach those dreams, but there's also the hard reality that those dreams sometimes can become nightmares if you don't you know, connect. So I think, long story short, I would just say that you use college for really what you want to do, if you know what you want to do. I would say that if you are not clearly sure about what you want to do, take a class here or there at the community college. Take it at, you know, Lackawanna. Take it at Pierce, just to get your feet wet. If you're going, but you know, if you're an adult student, I would say just be clear about the path. You don't want to go to this path and this path and this path, right? Because I've seen students do that too. Drop out, get all these loans, and then, you know, so you know, it's not a question that I can clearly give a straight answer, because I don't think it's a straight answer. But I think I would just say that for the students out there, just do your research before you jump out there.
I was about to piggyback and almost say that exact same thing. You spoke on a couple of things talking about privilege, right? And for each student, it's different, because like you said, for some students, there's a clock on it, and it's like, maybe I can afford to go, but if I can, I only have like this amount of time. I remember talking to people who worked full time while they were going to school full time, and like that blew my mind, because I was like, well, you know, how I'm gonna play basketball if I gotta work for it? You know what I mean? So I think your last point is the thing that I would say. I tell my players all the time, like, look, dream as big as you want. Like, it's big. But you got to be honest about where you are, like, and who you are, where you're trying to get to, and how you going to fill that gap. Because I think what happens is, like we were talking about, like, there's a delusion, but the delusion comes from the ignorance, right? Like, if you're not talking with people and you're not doing research, you don't know what you don't know. And so I would say, as much as possible, like, have a practical plan and do research on, like, talk to as many people as you can that have done it, have succeeded, and have failed. Because like, you need information is so important, and that still don't guarantee you nothing but work. Like, you gotta work at it.
Good. I like that.
But make a plan, do your research, and then just get after it. So
that's good.
That's what I would say.
That's good. I actually started thinking about, like, my journey, because I didn't have a traditional journey into school myself. When I was 17, I was wrestling. I graduated 17th birthday late in the year, and I was trying to figure out what it was I wanted to do, and I made a decision. But because my decision wasn't really set, I ended up changing my major every single semester for the first 2 years.
That's crazy.
Of me being in school. And it went from me getting good grades to my grades being marginal to my grades being poor, because I started losing connection to my academic pursuit along the way. A part of that, I think, could have been fixed with some good counselors in that time. But, you know, at the end of the day, you know, you had what you had to work with. But at the core of it, what I ended up doing was leaving education as a whole. I was about 19 years old, and I was working full time at FedEx Airport, Newark Liberty Airport.
You've told me.
Yeah, I told you about that. Yeah. So I was working up at FedEx, and I was working in the airport doing, like, load captain stuff, like making sure the freight was getting to the right bin of the planes, the Airbuses, and like driving the machines that put it up to the planes. And this was my job, like, and I loved it because I got paid every week. And it was an overnight job, so I got to hang out on the weekends because I never really worked weekends there. And then I got a job with New Jersey Transit because they needed bus drivers, and I had got hired as a bus driver. So this is interesting, right? I'm 19 years old, and this must have been bad if they're hiring 19-year-old bus drivers.
I was about to say, that sounds
That's crazy. There was an initiative that was started to get more bus drivers because there wasn't enough people that was willing to drive through, like, Newark during this time, because it was really, really tough, really rough during those times. And so I'm driving in New Jersey Transit. I'm working at FedEx, 2 jobs with pensions, 2 jobs that paid me. I would have got paid every other week or so from both jobs. And I was young, so I had the energy to do it. I thought I was winning. But then my parents said, hey, we're moving to South Jersey. And if we move, should we have you in mind? And I was like, nah, I'm good. I got everything I need up here. I'll be straight. I started to imagine, getting my own place because I was still living at home at the time and such. But then my mom came back to me and said, hey, you know what? If you move down, because, old school moms, they give you opportunity, but they take them opportunities away if you wasn't doing right. So they stopped paying for school when my grades went from good to mediocre to poor. They were like, nah, we're not paying for you to do poor now. So you go figure out your own thing. You got to get a job now. And that's what I was doing. I was working. But she said, if you move down to South Jersey with us, we'll pay for you to get your next degree. And I was literally in the belly of a plane one day waiting for the freight to come in. And I heard two of my colleagues who were sitting there, and they had been working there for about like 25, 30 years. And they were the old heads. And they were like, yeah, young bloods, if you get up to our level, you get that good, 22 an hour, 22 an hour. And I started thinking to myself.
You start doing that math.
Yeah, I'm like 25 years, 22 an hour. I'm making like 17 right now. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't think this is really, this isn't what I would want to imagine my future to be. Like, I know I got more in me.
Right.
And it's not to even shade,
right?
Yeah.
People who choose service fields or blue collar work and things of that nature. But I just knew that wasn't for me.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And in that moment, I moved down to South Jersey. I started school, and the greatest value that I've gotten so far hasn't even been education, but it's been the relationships that I formed where the people who I've literally done life with since joining school, they're the godfathers of my children. Mm-hmm. They're the people who have gone up in their professional pursuits. They've been pathways for me to get jobs along the way. I'll even shout out one of them. Luckner Paul is one of the first guys that I met when I moved down here. I think at least one of you know him.
Yeah, I know.
But in either case, these are guys who I've known now for over 20, 25 years because I decided to pursue education. So I want to tell all the people who are listening right now, as much as we get focused on the dollar, as much as we have bills to pay, and that can sometimes be the biggest thing in our way of feeling like we'll be successful. If all your bills were paid, but you didn't have your soul satisfied, would you feel good? Would you be the best version of yourself on this earth? And sometimes I think that we don't always have an awareness because we're always living in the struggle. But I want to submit to you guys as another area of consideration that as you pursue your degree, don't just show up just to get the A, but show up for everything else that shows up along the way. Be a part of the programs, be a part of the system. Immerse yourself in the environment and get everything you can. Squeeze that institution, that college, that academic space for all that it's worth so that when you leave, you got every penny's worth out of that, because I guarantee you that value will have reciprocal value that will pay you forward for generations and generations to come. So with that, I want to thank you for this episode. Thank you for joining us. And this has been another episode of the All I Do Is Win podcast. And until next time. Peace. Throw them up. Peace.